Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Simplus Sessions. Today, we are talking about how to reduce churn and increase revenue in subscription models. Now, I know you're all expecting to hear from Kyle first to do introductions, but we thought we'll mix it up a bit. Clearly, I'm not him. My name is Vass Malanos, and I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Revelian. We're a Simplus customer and a SaaS-based business, changing the world one assessment at a time. So I'll just give you a little bit of background about Revelian and my role within this pretty awesome company. So Revelian provides online psychometric assessments to the global market with very small beginnings in Brisbane. And I'm sure some of you have completed some of our assessments when applying for roles in organisations, as we have a pretty large footprint in the Australian market. So I'm the Chief Commercial Officer responsible for sales, operations and finance for the business. Now, this may appear to be a pretty broad remit of contradiction, but having both the sales and finance combined has allowed us to look a bit more pragmatically about how we service our clients and how we package our offerings to market, maximizing the strategic value of the business at the same time. So you're all here today because you're potentially SaaS-based companies looking for ways to enable your business or retain customers better. Because we know more than ever, it's important that you don't miss those renewal opportunities or ability to grow your client base. But I thought just to start today's discussion is a little bit of housekeeping that we need to go through. And at the end of the day, this is a conversation. And so if you do wish to ask a question throughout this webinar, please feel free to click on the blue raised hand, which is in the top right-hand corner of your screen. So don't be shy because questions are anonymous. So let's begin. It was about 4 odd years ago with some restructuring in our business where there was an extremely strong appetite to take our unique products and service to a global market in a very consistent and scalable way. We did not want to open up new offices, rely on large remote employee bases, and all the operational, legal, tax considerations that come from having a physical presence. So we knew our first to market solutions that were sold online needed the sales methodology to be aligned to that approach. So if we do fast forward to today, and Revelian's revenue profile and client base includes multinational companies such as IBM, PwC, KPMG, and Johnson & Johnson. And they use our psychometric recruitment assessments across 40 countries and in 20 languages. So it's through this proven methodology and focus on client retention and scalable solutions where Revelian has been made more attractive to the market and recently acquired by a US-based employment analytics company called Criteria Corp, with the vision of integrating Revelian's game-based assessments approach to the North American and new countries around the world. And it's that journey using Salesforce CPQ as the baseline to best of breed account management and retention that has brought me here today, sharing the screen with Simplus and Salesforce.
Wow, thanks, Vass, and thanks for being on here with us today. Apologies to everyone. I had an equipment issue that wouldn't allow me to be on camera today, so I guess apologies or congratulations, depending on if you know me or not. It's a great intro. I couldn't have done it better myself. One of the major themes in our webinar today is putting your customers first, and so we're grateful to have Revelian, a great Simplus customer, go first here on this webinar. We've also got Ruben Stephens here from Salesforce, who's responsible for bringing QuotetoCash products to the world here in Australia, and that includes CPQ products and billing products, which we are going to focus some of our conversation on today. So Ruben, how are you? Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, Kyle, and good afternoon to all who are watching this webinar. Thank you so much for making time to join us today. Thank you, Kyle and the Simplus team for inviting me to be part of today's panel. Thank you, Vass, as well. We're looking forward to hearing more about your insights, experience, and learnings today. And for being thank you for being a great customer of Salesforce. And I've been with the QuotetoCash team at Salesforce now for going on 3 years and really enjoying my time here.
Great. So starting off, Ruben, can you tell us firstly what is CPQ? Because we're going to be using that acronym here a little bit today in our conversation.
Sure. Thanks, Kyle. CPQ really stands for Configure Price Quote. It's a Configure Price Quote software by Salesforce. It's a sales tool for companies to provide accurate pricing with any given product configuration scenario, whether it be a one-off transaction or a subscription, usage-based or evergreen. CPQ takes into account optional features, customizations, quantities, bundles, contract pricing, discounts, and essentially allows sales reps to quote prices quickly and accurately.
Thanks, Ruben. And everybody, if you joined our last Simplus session, you know me, but I run our sales group here for Simplus in Australia. Prior to joining Simplus Australia, I spent 4 years with Simplus in the U.S., and I headed up our delivery, globally for the company. Now, some history: Simplus was one of the first Salesforce CPQ partners, and we've been doing CPQ implementations for a long time. Today's theme of how to reduce churn and increase revenue, you might be thinking, well, what Ruben just described is pretty internal processes. How does that affect kind of either retaining our customers or increasing our revenue? And, you'll learn more about that as we dive deeper into the Revelian story today. The way that we define churn is if you're a subscription company, your customers churn when they cancel their subscription. So that's what we're talking about today. And, we know that SaaS is becoming more and more prevalent in today's world. Now, subscription as a service, whether you're a software company or a traditional subscription type business, you're probably looking at introducing more subscription streams of revenue into your business for many reasons. It provides more stability. It's easier to forecast. And as Vass mentioned, it can make you more attractive on the market and increase the value of your business. So we're going to dive into Revelian's journey a bit today to talk about how their journey on Salesforce specifically has allowed them to have great success in the years kind of leading up to the current crisis that we're in. And then we're also going to talk about how a strong strategy using technology can help kind of navigate the choppy waters that we're in right now with COVID-19. So getting back to the Revelian story, Vass, you've been investing in Salesforce since about 2013. Now, as a business that sells a major portion of subscriptions for your revenues, have you realized the benefits of running your business on a SaaS model through Salesforce?
Yeah, there's a few elements to that, Kyle. It'll be fair to say that it's a much easier solution to the client at the end of the day. There generally is a known budget and for a given term, and we do our best to work within those parameters. So subscription does make sense to get that recurring revenue. Ultimately, as well, we are all about our clients and having a deeper type of engagement with them. The longer they are retained by us, obviously, the better for the business overall and the value that's attached to that. So we do measure things like lifetime value, which connects the revenue to the cost of delivery to the client. So in essence, the longer that a client is retained in the business, the cost of delivery reduces over time.
Great, thanks. And Ruben, thank you for joining us on the call today. It's nice to do a webinar with you. How are you doing through all this mess with COVID?
I'm really good, Kyle. Kids are going back to school next week, and cafes and restaurants in Victoria are opening next week. So I've got something to look forward to next week. So all good.
That's great. It feels like as the world kind of gets over or starts to crawl out of the COVID-19 pandemic, which we don't know exactly how long it's going to go, we're seeing some changes. Some things are returning to normal, some things aren't. What is going on with your customers right now? Salesforce is a huge company with lots of customers. How has the current climate kind of impacted them, and how have you seen your customers respond?
Sure. I think today the themes that we're seeing is the need to pivot quickly and efficiently from an operations perspective. So the quote-to-cash process is at the heart of a company's revenue. It impacts the cash flow, the supply chain, and how customer agreements are structured. And I think Vass sort of reflected around lifetime value and things like that. Many organizations have fragmented quote-to-cash process, and they use, for a better term, duct tape, like spreadsheets, legacy systems, paper, and email to sell products, book orders, and collect payments. So the rapid shift, particularly in the last 3 months, to remote work caused by COVID-19 has torn apart the duct tape holding these processes together, creating a lot of disruption and exposing them to great risk related to the revenue and, importantly, to cash flow. Depending on your organization's needs, there's probably 4 ways that to position CPQ and billing or quote-to-cash within the COVID-19 context and the impact. The first thing is you've got to be able to enable digital quoting and purchasing. So you want to be able to keep deals, revenue, cash flowing in, and while reps are actually working remotely, as we are all at the moment. Negotiations at the moment are tenuous and complicated because of differing needs, and also you've got approval chains that typically you might have to walk across to are disrupted because everyone's pretty much back in their homes. Second thing is you've got to be able to adapt products and pricing, and I think Vass will talk a little bit more, to respond to these abrupt changes in customer preferences and also the demand in the marketplace, forcing a lot of organizations to launch new products, pivot, go-to-market strategies, and also, importantly, to enable your field teams who are now working remotely. And this is something I'm really hearing a lot about, is streamlining cash collection to ensure that cash flow remains sufficient. I mean, let's face it, if the cash is not coming in, it's going to make it very hard to do a lot of things that you might want to do, particularly when many finance teams at the moment are relying on overly manual processes for creating invoices, collecting payments, which are requiring billing data from the sales process that's inaccurate or incomplete. And customers are also asking for changes in payment terms, and we haven't escaped that as well. We're helping customers to do that. The final point here is you've got to be able to automate amendments and renewals to maintain your customer base when a majority have been impacted and may require contract changes and creating a whole influx of complex transactions for remote teams to process. So essentially, if you're a business that's dependent on manual processes or very heavy, clunky processes to manage your quote to cash, then the isolation of your folks in sales operations, product, finance, and IT teams would have created a lot of challenges. I might just give you 2 examples if it's okay, and I've got permission to talk about these 2 clients. Podium is a client that sells messaging capabilities, and they sell to local businesses who were dramatically impacted by social distancing requirements to curb the spread of COVID. To help their customers, they launched a free new product that allowed local businesses to coordinate food pickups via text message. They launched this queue in 6 days, thanks to CPQ, versus, in their terms, multiple weeks or months that would have normally taken them to do that using their old systems. The second one is also a really nice story, and happens to be a Simplus customer as well. The customer is Tough Shed. They make custom sheds for anyone interested in a shed. Initially, they saw a 60% drop in revenue at the outset of COVID and had laid off, I think, about 80-odd sales reps. However, with the data and the insights they were able to garner from the Salesforce platform, they actually adjusted their target market to focus on COVID-relevant use cases for sheds like healthcare facilities and food storage. So thanks to CPQ, now they can configure, price, sign, and collect payment remotely. And sales have rebounded, and they've actually hired back most of the salespeople, if not all, who were laid off 3 months ago.
That's really great to hear that they're doing a little bit better. And I think the key theme that kind of rang out in the examples and what you were talking about is flexibility, right? A lot of the companies that we're seeing that are trying to kind of operate more efficiently are getting stuck because they either use legacy systems or systems that are really hard to update. And so as they're coming up with great ideas of how to react to COVID-19 on behalf of their customers, they're having a hard time actually implementing the new revenue stream or the new offering. And, it's great to hear that Podium was able to get something like that, a new SKU launched into the market in 6 days without having to worry about it's going to be 6 weeks of engineering and then testing and then training a sales team on how to sell something new. They're able to implement that. That's really great. Going back to you, Vass, you probably got a really interesting, view on how sales processes and finance processes work together. And you're probably seeing the world from a little bit different light, since your role is kind of joining sales and finance, But before we get to that, how are your customers going? What types of things are you guys doing to react to your customers' needs in the COVID-19 world that we're in?
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. There's probably a couple of things that do come to mind. And there's no surprise that Revelian is obviously quite exposed to the recruitment space. And it's fair to say that we also, as an organization, have to be agile enough to be able to work with our clients in a very commercial yet flexible way, and also move our to some other products. We don't just sell recruitment assessments, we also sell talent management assessments. So that ability to toggle within the same remit and subscription is quite important. So we certainly have identified that prospects and leads, as I mentioned before, do have very finite budgets. So it's our ability to work within those budgets on that subscription-based model that allows us to have that flexibility. And as much as probably as an accountant putting that hat on hates the words an unlimited model, we certainly work in a subscription model that does give a certain flexibility to most of our clients to work within agreed parameters that meets their new needs, even under this COVID environment. So that gives them price surety. It better positions us in the organization to be that trusted advisor that a lot of clients are looking for in this uncertain time. And I think also it's about still keeping an eye on where those upsell opportunities lie. They may not happen in today's world, but they may happen in 6 months' time. So a bit more flexibility, a bit more exposure on the tools that you have to offer during where everyone's going into more of a lockdown period. It's very important to be able to identify that when things do turn better. So Revelian benefits by promoting best practice and continual business improvement in the recruitment space with the best of breed assessments, and the client ends up with a good outcome, which is a quality candidate or happier employees.
Thanks, Vass. You must be retaining customers and even acquiring more. On your initial description of how Revelian is doing, it sounds like you've been quite fortunate during this time, even selling your business because it's doing so well. So, beyond what you've already described, are there any other secrets you can share with us?
Oh, no secrets at all. It's just, to be honest, a pretty well trodden path in most organizations, but I think it's important to have a very aligned strategy and people not prepared that are prepared to put some sweat in the game as well within the organization, which leads to the importance about having a very capable team. We certainly do practice what we preach, and we are absolutely better for it. I love using that line because it's exactly what we do as an organization, and that's what we promote to our to the market. And it takes a smart, dedicated team to deliver these types of outcomes and not to take your eye off the ball. So in a relatively short amount of time, say 6 to 9 months, we've done a lot of stuff in the business. So you know what, even as we're biting into the COVID, we ended up having record revenue months for the month of March and for the March quarter that just passed. We obviously have sold the business about 3 months ago in February. And that takes, a lot of dedicated time going through a due diligence process. We continue to employ and invest in our team for a global rollout. So that again does take a bit of effort internally. We also, and this is actually probably a key to our success as well, is establishing very strong reseller arrangements with into new regions where we again do not want to open up offices or have a physical presence. Go and throw in amongst all of that a rollout of CPQ at the end of last year, And you know what, we've gone through the process right now, rolling out by about mid-June our Salesforce billing project as well. So it's great to be able to see that whole ecosystem be further enhanced from where it was even 12 months ago. So Salesforce absolutely has been the anchor point for reporting for the sale of the business, increasing recurring revenue, and CPQ being a part of that. And we're also looking for that billing flexibility within Salesforce billing for our rollout in June. So we've had some pretty high profile clients that have been in a position, unfortunate, to have to close their doors as far as their whole business is concerned. So we've had the opportunity to even work with them and put agreements almost like into a pseudo hibernation of sorts, so that even though they may not be recruiting now, they potentially, and some are already turning the lights on, will have a higher rate of recruitment as they come out of these lockdowns. So we are available and ready to assist them for any significant intake of recruitment that they'll be undertaking in the next few months.
Well, great. So you mentioned a few things that Revelian has been doing ongoing that has created a successful strategy, and then you mentioned that you rolled out CPQ and you're rolling out billing right now. Since this is a technology webinar, we're going to shift and kind of drill a little bit deeper there. Now, our customers that we see implementing CPQ are usually looking to either reduce the amount of errors that their reps make, or shorten sales cycle times, or make it easier to navigate really complex kind of product books. Maybe you can take us through a little bit what life was like at Revelian before you decided to implement CPQ, and now kind of what it's like after you've done that CPQ process. And I'll put you on the spot a little bit and see if you can extend on that and how that might be affecting your customers, like a better quoting process. How does that benefit your customers?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh boy, when you're rattling all those things off about manual systems, errors, and things like that, that was our world prior to CPQ in many ways. So sure, you had a baseline of Salesforce out of the box, but again, being able to control and manage and authorize all of those other important parts of the organization, which includes consistent pricing, human error when it comes to working offline on contracts and Word documents and things like that can be missed. But ultimately, we were always about trying to be consistent in our approach with all clients and resellers. Again, they work with us, and sometimes they work against us in a very small economy like Australia. So we've got to make sure we stay agnostic on particular go-to-market. So we're focused on knowing now where our marketing spend is going and is it effective. We did not have a great control on our reporting capabilities prior, and consistency in that quotation, making sure that any discounts that are offered are at least authorized in a much more automated process, which it is. And I love getting my little Salesforce app and approving things off the app in a matter of seconds, where in the past it'll be through some big email trail that's probably passed through a few people along the way. So makes my life just a little bit easier. So I'm not now relying on just the system. I'm also relying, to be honest, on having a culture that's very much hinged around having everything in the one database like Salesforce is. I think what had happened is that we were too focused on solution selling to a client in a very bespoke way, rather than taking that step back, looking at how we can better vanillarize it, using a word of sorts, to a subscription model, making that sales process much more easier and less complex. So we've had to do a big change in our internal behaviors with our sales teams and the rest of the business that uses Salesforce through the casing to other departments and things like that, but as well as making sure that consistency stays true to the client. So to be honest, although some of our clients are downscaling their services, they are still staying with us, because I think there's actually getting a bit more strong belief that the economy is absolutely turning for the better over the next 6 months. And there's enough evidence out there to now support that. And the concept of a subscription methodology certainly works within this environment. So our ability to boil down our measures of success to a few KPIs is absolutely key. Lifetime value, as I mentioned previously, does matter, and we have identified in a short amount of time better retention statistics as we engage with our clients on a SaaS-based perspective. So we're pretty proud of what we've achieved in that area of the business.
Oh, great. So, do you leverage Salesforce analytics to kind of get those metrics that you're talking about, like lifetime value?
Yeah, 100%. So, yeah, we live and breathe right from the CEO through to our new reports in the US. Everyone has that transparency and visibility to the same data. And again, people can self-manage when they choose to, as opposed to waiting for the end of the month report to come through. But that means that you've got to have the right discipline at the coal face, at the client facing, making sure that the opportunities are accurate and timely, and the quotations are up to date, authorized. So that gives us that ability to forecast so much better than what we had previously.
Yeah, you mentioned forecasting and talked about kind of a 6-month looking forward. I'm going to shift over to Ruben for a second, and then I'd like to get your take on forecasting as well, Vass, in a minute. But Ruben, it's hard to forecast right now. COVID-19 is going to change everything. Thinking about Salesforce, you guys create a product that does really good forecasting, but you're also a sales company. Like, you guys sell a lot of stuff. So what is Salesforce doing, or what are you doing, maybe you personally or your team, or what is Salesforce's philosophy on how to forecast more accurately when there's so much uncertainty in the market? And then we'll come back to you, Vass, for a question on your forecasting.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. Look, it is hard to forecast during this time, but being a public company, Salesforce being a public company for many, many years now, forecasting has always, there's been a lot of rigor around forecasting, and as Vass will be discussing and has touched on, what's really cool, for us is the ability to get most of the data, if not all of the data, in real time in terms of pipeline, quotes, subscriptions, etc. So you can put anything in the pipeline and you can put anything into your forecast, but what the platform does is cross-check and enables, my management and all the way up to Mr. Benioff, to ensure that they have a very strong perspective on where things are today, next month, and next quarter. I think the ability to have the data on the one platform, and I think Vass really articulated this really nicely, makes it very powerful. And the visibility across the different parts of the business come together, and I guess adds a lot more accuracy to the short, mid, and the long-term forecast. And I think this is where the recurring model or the subscription model really shines.
Thanks, Ruben. So yeah, Vass, now back to you and your thoughts on forecasting. 6 months is a long lookout, so how do you guys approach your forecasting?
Yeah, good question. We're very focused on that in that subscription model where we can predict when the renewals are coming due at a particular time, whether it's on the annual basis or other. So the cycle does matter. The other thing too is it's not just about having accuracy in the forecasting; it's the conversations that go with it. And so you essentially can filter from our account managers through to the manager, where we can, further articulate or get further accuracy as to the probability of our forecasting, whether it's for this month, this quarter, or potentially in 6 months' time. So having the right internal process to complement Salesforce and forecasting is key to ensure by the time it moves through the organization up to a C-suite level, that it's at least been vetted a few times over. And again, making sure that the whole business knows that, the truth is in Salesforce, as lame as that may sound.
So thank you both. If I were to kind of summarize what you're teaching us about forecasting now, it kind of seems like your two companies, they're very different, but you've developed the right strategy for forecasting, and then you use tools to help you maintain the integrity of the data. so you can execute on the strategy. And I think that's good advice for everybody listening. We planned this webinar prior to COVID-19 even existed. So the topic of beating the churn, just to remind you, losing subscription customers is even more relevant now because a lot of, as Ruben kind of mentioned, a lot of customers are looking for either kind of to cancel or churn or, reduce their licenses or reduce their subscription costs, when really if you can forecast well and provide a good customer experience, then you're going to lose fewer of those customers. So thank you both for sharing your insights. Final question before we start opening it up to the audience for questions. So just a reminder, if you want to ask a question, use that blue hand. So back to your Vass, you've implemented CPQ, you've implemented billing now. Maybe you can talk to us a little bit about what you're looking to get out of your billing system and what advice you would give to any other organizations looking at improving their sales processes and billing processes as you guys have.
Yeah, thanks. It's very much, we've come from a belief in the organization, a legacy belief that if you could build it, you should. And we built our own billing system 15 years ago. And we built our own quotation system 15 years ago. And of course, the market changes. And if you're taking away software engineers to build in-house systems, and then it's not just the build once, it's the maintenance of thereafter every time you want to enhance it, that's a problem. And certainly was a bit of a roadblock for us to build client-facing product where the revenue does come from. So trying to find that balance had been a bit problematic, and the priorities do change from year to year. So we've really are looking forward to the billing side, giving us that further capability and flexibility where there is that common theme of recurring revenue and subscription. And I promise I won't mention that anymore. But I think it's to say, what are all the other parameters that live with it around that? So in other words, does a client now want to be charged quarterly in advance or quarterly in arrears or paid up front or on a monthly cycle? So it's that type of ability, as well as our ability to integrate our core system, as we may call it, of all the right data through technology into the best of breed system, so that we can do all of our account management and all of our collections and all of that back end stuff that still is important to an account, to a client in the one system. So the last thing we ever wanted was our account managers managing issues like billing and collections and discrepancies from invoicing. So this is definitely a big leap forward for us. And also with the acquisition that we've gone through, it's now giving us that ability to do multi-currency taxation considerations in different geographies that we now move into. So we're pretty excited, and it couldn't come at a better time.
Well, we're excited with you, and we're grateful to be able to be part of that journey that you're on. Now, Ruben, same question. Do you have any advice for the listeners on how to prepare for a quote-to-cash journey?
Sure. I think Vass answered a lot of that, but just to reflect on the themes, most customers like Revelian, they start their quote-to-cash journey with CPQ for all the reasons that we've discussed. And as the benefits of CPQ are realized, the next step in thinking, and exactly as Revelian's gone through, is to take that whole quote to order process right out to your back-end billing system, back-end ERP and finance systems. So essentially what the thinking is to bring your back-end to your front end. So this was initially answered by, what we discussed today on the benefits of CPQ, and how do you put your customer at the center of your business? And then the ability to be able to serve them the best. And it doesn't rest on the front end of the business, but importantly, the ability to bring that whole back end, as Vass articulated beautifully just before, the back end of the business to the front. So you got that, essentially you've got that single pane of glass. So the billing function will then start to serve the customer, your account management teams, your finance teams, your sales ops, and your services teams. So CPQ and billing, essentially, in a nutshell, connect all these functions on a single pane of glass. And I always talk about how the iPhone has been able to bring together so many different functions that we used to carry around in different pockets and bags. So that's essentially what CPQ billing does. And the other really, and I'll touch quickly on this, is billing gives the ability for a business to see their cash position. Now, in this economic crisis time, this is really, really important because that's what dictates what you're going to be doing over the next month, 3 months, and 6 months. And the ability to see that position very clearly on a day-to-day basis, and I'm referring to things like accounts receivable, is really powerful. And finally, as mentioned today from what Vass talked about, and what you're also reflecting, Kyle, is that the flexibility and agility during particularly these types of economic times, and the ability to view your position is vital, not just for the survival of your business, but also to take advantage and pivot to a post-COVID world where everything digital becomes just that much more important.
Thank you, Ruben. Thank you, Vass, and thanks everybody for joining us at Simplus Sessions today. I'd like to kind of summarize, some parting thoughts. Whether you're on a journey and you're going to continue it and your focus is scaling to get bigger because you weren't affected by COVID-19, or if you're solving a different challenge and trying to do the same amount of revenue with fewer people because you were affected by COVID-19, the clear strategy should not be kind of hire more people to do more manual reconciliation because your systems can't provide the flexibility that you need or handle kind of your subscription kind of updates and amendments, things like that. My advice is take the advice of Vass and Ruben and focus on your customers. If you focus on your IT strategy and get the right tools in place so that you can be flexible enough to offer your customers what they need in the right moment, and also have the data available internally to make the right decisions for yourselves, your investors, and your customers, you will benefit, but also you'll keep more people employed. Your customers, they will love their quoting process. It'll be easy for them to buy from you. It'll be easy for them when they're billed to understand their bill and pay it easily. So you won't lose as many of your subscription customers. And you can do a lot with your technology, but if you do nothing, you will not get better. So, we applaud everyone who's on their journey, continuing to invest in their IT infrastructure in these challenging times. It takes a bit of bravery, but it is the right thing to do. And we all will be better in it from the end, and it will help our economy keep on going. So that concludes our message for today. Thank you, Vass. Thank you, Ruben, for your insight. We've got a few minutes for open Q&A. So if you haven't submitted a question, please do so now. It looks like we do have a couple. So I will read them, and hopefully you guys can take the tough ones. All right, first question. We are an organization who has a mix of perpetual-based products and SaaS-based products. As a result of COVID-19, we're looking to accelerate our move to majority SaaS. How can Salesforce help with this? Either of you want to give some advice on that?
I'm happy to answer that, certainly. Look, we work with great partners like Simplus, so you certainly can reach directly to Kyle's team on that. But from our perspective, we are a recurring revenue business. We do it well. We were one of the original ones, I guess, 20 odd years ago to start an enterprise business in this manner. Reach out to your account teams, and we would be more than happy to have a discussion on how you do this without necessarily, having to throw products at you, but actually talking about what's really important. And I think Vass kind of reflected a lot of this. It's really to understand your process and what you're trying to achieve, and where does the customer fit into the equation here. And then we then work backwards from there. So happy to chat, and certainly the guys at Simplus, any advice from Revelian would be great here as well.
Yeah, I might just add to that as well, Ruben. Revelian certainly started off being a more transactional type of business from a revenue profile perspective. We used to do a lot of projects that used to have and still have a little bit, that we're working on removing the transactional nature of some of our revenue streams as we speak, and billing will support that. So it'd be fair to say that Salesforce, as a best of breed, it certainly does support whatever model you do choose to go with. So we used Salesforce in one, but certainly are better for it moving to the subscription model.
I'll add my 2 cents. If you're looking to add more SaaS-based products, my advice would be, yes, do it. Subscriptions are very beneficial to your company. Now, the challenges that you'll run into are all around, can your systems handle it? How hard is it to start selling something new? What does the training internally look like? If you leverage technology, CPQ is a big help whenever you're introducing any type of new product that you're selling. A lot of kind of the modes that companies get in is when they start selling something new or combinations of new things, they just add SKUs and add SKUs and add SKUs, and then they sell that SKU, but then all the real work around positioning and training happens outside of the IT systems. And so you kind of sell a SKU and then do everything you need to manually outside of the system in order to be ready to sell it and ready to do amendments. And then you end up having to kind of hire people and fix systems over time and put all these band-aids in. So my advice, as Ruben mentioned, consult with an expert, help figure out what the right plan is to do it and how to do it right the first time so you don't create more work for yourself. All right, looks like we have one more question about renewals. Renewals can have many touch points: marketing, customer success, service, and sales. How do you collaborate all these touch points en masse to make sure the renewal team is fully aware and supported? So it's kind of a visibility question, right? Ruben kind of mentioned this about having that full 360-degree view. Ruben, would you like to elaborate on that a little bit, on how that can help, that visibility can help in kind of collaboration amongst many teams?
Sure. There's probably a couple of points to this. One is, it's great to sell the subscriptions in using whichever tools you do, but the ability for a system to understand that renewals are coming up in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and to automatically have that visible, not just to your sales teams, but your renewals teams and potentially your all the way back up to your finance teams or to your finance teams. I think the ability to have that automated takes a hell of a lot of, pardon the expression, but takes a hell of a lot of effort from the operations of an organization. Think about it. If you've sold something and a year from now that there's going to be a renewal coming through, but you don't need someone to necessarily come and tell you because the systems that you have with Salesforce in this instance will automatically feed that up to you. So that data, the visibility of that data, and the utilization of that data for your metrics and KPIs is there at the moment that you actually even sell the product in the first place or sell the subscription in the first place.
Yeah, agreed. And there's probably a few cool tricks in Salesforce that support that, particularly around cloning of opportunities as well. So you don't have to necessarily always replicate in a manual format, particularly come renewal time. So that does give a lot of time back from either the customer success team or those that support them.
Great. Gentlemen, thank you both for all of the insight. Thanks for running a Simplus session with me today. Thanks for the great opening, Vass. That was fantastic. Problem. And thanks to all you listeners for joining us today in Simplus Sessions. We hope to see you on the next one. Hope you found value out of this. Feel free to leave us any feedback you have on the survey that you'll see as you exit. But have a great day, and hopefully we'll speak soon.
Thank you.